A very good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the virtual launch of the executive program in media leadership. We are so pleased that you could all join us today and really want to extend a warm welcome to you for joining in this conversation. I just want to remind everybody that we're going to be taking questions throughout for our guests. So please post all your questions in the chat. I also know that the program brochure is also going to be posted in the chat, as well as the application link. So, and if there's anything else that you need, please, this is an interactive session, and we really want to get some engagement and conversation going as well as we take you through the virtual launch of the program. So we're really here because it's a powerful leadership initiative, getting off the ground for African media professionals. And it isn't just a course, it's really a response to what is an ever deepening crisis. In fact, it was a year to the day that Daily Maverick did their big shutdown last year, that we did our shutdown. So it's actually fitting that we're doing this today, because it is this ongoing call to action, really, for the future of media right here on the continent, that these kinds of initiatives we feel so compelled about. So I really would love to introduce you to my guests, starting off with, I call him my big boss, Stili Shalolambos. I am actually Saskia Falcon, Head of Strategic Partnerships at Daily Maverick, but Stili is the co-founder and CEO at Daily Maverick. Welcome, Stili.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here and really excited to be talking about this incredible opportunity for African media leaders and finally getting to the starting point.
And then also we are very grateful to be joined by the director of GIBS Media Leadership Think Tank, Michael Markovitz. Michael, welcome.
Thanks very much, Saskia. Also very excited to kick this off.
And it's really a much needed initiative. I think perhaps we should start at the very beginning, which is the nugget of the why this program was created and why this is a very important milestone for us as African media professionals.
Thanks, Saskia. I'll go straight to it. And I just need to first say, look, I'm really pleased to be speaking with you today about this launch, why we created it, as Saskia asked, where it comes from, why we believe it marks a very important intervention in the African media landscape. I think everyone on this virtual meet knows that the global media sector is in crisis, and for a range of reasons: economic, technological, political. And we all know that the traditional business model that sustained journalism for well over a century is no longer working. But I think we know also that this crisis is felt much more acutely in the global south, particularly here on the African continent, where market failure, infrastructure gaps, there are many fragile democracies which make it harder to sustain independent media. And at the think tank, Saskia, we see media sustainability not just as a industry concern, but it's actually a democratic imperative. When public interest journalism collapses, the foundations of accountability and informed citizen engagement begin to erode. So when we started the think tank, our focus was really primarily on policy, on legislation and regulatory interventions. And we've been very active in public interest advocacy, pushing for stronger competition frameworks, for platform accountability and fairer media ecosystems. But we also recognize that we're sitting inside one of Africa's leading business schools, and it's got the ability to impact not only ideas and leadership. So while, don't get me wrong, regulatory reform is critical, it's a slow burn and it's a long term. So at the same time, we need to do something urgent, a practical, immediate intervention that helps emerging media. And so that's where the idea came from. And Stili, who you'll hear more from now, when we began talking about it, I think it was about 18 months ago, Stili, we thought, like, what can we do that speaks directly to the challenges that African media leaders face? Not just theoretical frameworks or case studies from the global north, but the lived realities of operating in low resource, high pressure, and often very politically sensitive environments across the continent. And we noticed also, Saskia, that most of the world's top executive programs in media and journalism leadership are based in the US, UK, and other parts of Europe. Excellent offerings, but and we know the people that do them, they're great, but often these are inaccessible, they're much more expensive, and they're not really designed for our context and the unique realities, the economic precariousness of many of our societies, the infrastructural challenges, and the political risk. But also on the positive side, extraordinary innovation resilience we see across the continent. So that's why we thought of building a custom-built program rooted in Africa, but globally connected, a course that draws on our world-class faculty at GIBS, a space where African media and communication professionals can come together and learn from one another. And that's what we've begun to build. We've been fortunate, I must say, at this stage. We've attracted an excellent mix of African and international experts who are keen to join us in this inaugural program. So just, in conclusion, just from my opening remarks is, I'm really excited to see who joins our first cohort, because there's really something unique about a first cohort. It helps shape the culture, the impact, and the legacy of the program. And we're already seeing interest from outside Southern Africa, which is exactly what we hope for. Our aim really is to build a Pan-African, long-term, a Pan-African alumni of media leaders, not just an African one. So as you know, GIBS sees itself as a proudly African business school with global relevance, and we think that the program reflects this identity. We think it's probably a bit ambitious, but it's practical and it's very needed. So thanks again. I look forward to talking more about the program and answering your questions. And back to you, Saskia.
I really think that makes GIBS then really well placed, that Pan-Africanist look, but also that idea of taking bold steps when it comes to development of our people, so that we have the right capacity in order to do the work that needs to be done. So it's very, very exciting, and yeah, it just feels really well placed for GIBS. This is your playground, I think, when it comes to innovative kind of programs with this Pan-Africanist type of outlook. Celia, I want to bring you in just to give us an overview of this program. It is a first of its kind on the continent. What can a potential cohort look forward to in terms of the kinds of themes that you'll be tackling?
Yeah, thanks, Saskia. And just to build on a little bit on Michael's genesis story for this as well, is we bumped into each other at a conference, a media conference. It was about 18 months ago, and we were talking about the challenges and the crisis that we experienced. And we really wanted to move from talking about it into doing something actionable against the crisis that we find ourselves in. And so using his network and resources and his ability and the think tank at the GIBS Institute, and also my experience having done one of these programs at the City University of New York, the idea of investing in leadership and the professional development of our leaders, because leadership is such a key part of the sustainability response that we need to implement, and there really wasn't anything like this that was available and accessible to ourselves and our colleagues on the continent. And so it was out of that frustration and recognizing that investing in leadership and the professional development of those people charged with navigating these difficult times was to bring something like this about and to bring it into fruition, so that we could host people at GIBS Business School as well. So just building on that, it's really about addressing the sustainability of public interest journalism, but also helping existing executives and aspiring executives in how to lead organizations through these challenging times. What does sustainability look like? What are the key drivers of sustainability? How do you build strategic influence as someone who is hoping to lead an organization or large teams? And what does that look like? How do you build that influence? What do you do in managing a crisis? How do you go through a restructuring? These are all some of the challenging problems that our organizations are faced with. Looking at innovation, looking at the impact of artificial intelligence on our business models, on our operations, and then wrapping that all up with a bit of strategic influence, business acumen, looking at entrepreneurship in Africa. And so here you can see all the different blocks, lots of emphasis on strategic transformation, disruption, responding to disruption through business model innovation, and then also how do we, sometimes as newsroom leaders who haven't been trained or exposed to some business acumen elements of leadership, introducing that as well. And so you can see quite broad spectrum. It's a 4-month course that is designed to condense all these elements down into a program with an exciting cohort of people from hopefully all over the continent. The cohort is such an important part of this experience. People are able to build networks, build alliances, and learn from others in other countries where their situations or their problems or their solutions might inspire others to implement those as well. And so it's a holistic program. It's going to cover a lot of these areas that drive sustainability, but also the opportunity for people to recognize where they need to go deeper, right? We're not going to be able to provide all the solutions in this condensed course, but also helps make a lot of the unknowns known so that we can then do further investment and to grow into those areas as well.
I just want to remind everyone, and we've got journalists here from all over the continent. It's so exciting to see, and all over the country. Welcome again, everybody, if you joined us late. This is an interactive program, so please post your questions or comments in the chat as we go through the hour today. I want to ask you, Stili, in particular, why should a media professional opt to go through a media leadership program as opposed to not just a general leadership program? Because there are many leadership programs out there in the executive education space. But why is it so important for a media professional to be able to lean into something like that's so specific for the industry and the challenges that the industry faces?
The way we've designed this course is to lean on some of those existing faculty members from the GIBS Business School, where those modules are transferable, where we recognize that some things will be very similar to what other businesses and other organizations experience, and the needs are transferable in that space. But media is different, journalism is different, communications is different, and so we need experts in those areas because we have this challenge, and recognizing that at the heart of some of the problem is that journalism is a public good, but it's wrapped inside of a business motive. And so that brings with it some complexity and challenges that are very specific to the industry, and therefore we need to respond with specific skills and people who have the expertise in those areas. And so it's designed to lean on the GIBS Business School where we can, and in other areas where we need those industry experts, we bring them in to do that.
Michael, I want to ask a question of you in terms of just looking at why leadership is so important in the media industry. I mean, in the media industry, when we talk about sustainability, we understand it from a lens of revenue, and we understand it from a lens of innovation, but we seldom talk about leadership being part of what needs to come to the table. And you're in this fantastic environment, this think tank, where you get to engage with us all the time. Can you just talk to us a little bit about this thread called leadership and how it can actually move and create momentum that's positive?
Thanks, Saskia. Look, it's arguable that leadership is needed everywhere, okay, not just in our sector. And I think there's a dearth of leadership across sectors of a society, but very specifically in our sector, because of the specific challenges faced, as Stili referred to it, it's a public good, but it's not underpinned by a strong economic model, even though it delivers value to society. And I think that's a very important notion, is how do you steer organizations who at the same time are dealing with this challenge to the fundamental basis upon which they've operated, dealing also with the new challenges of AI, how to incorporate it, how to deal with that, but also how to deal with the regulators, with policy. A lot of developments are going on around the world and globally on these issues. So we believed, and Stevie mentioned it, is to tap into the resources we already have at GIBS. So the advantage of this course is that, yes, there are other leadership courses at GIBS and elsewhere, but what we will be able to do is to cherry pick, if you like, some of those key faculty members who are not just experienced in leadership as an abstract, but leadership in Africa. Leadership in difficult environments, in some volatile environments, and I think that also goes to the nature of why we believe this course can give a unique opportunity, because it marries that understanding of business leadership in our very specific context, and that's why I think it's important.
And then also, if you can maybe build on a little bit more, Michael, just in terms of now the balance between theory and practical, because obviously as GIBS, you guys walk that line between practitioner and theory. So maybe you can just talk to us a little bit around that. Are there, how does the theory and the practicalness of the content all mixed together during the course of the 4 months?
So look, obviously it's a new course, so we're quite excited to see the combo of all of those things act out and be developed within the course. But very straightforward, and Stevie can go into more detail of it, is what we would like the successful applicant to become the first cohort to do is to come to the course with a specific challenge in their business or their environment, which they would like to solve. Whether it's business related, leadership related, business model related, whatever it is, something that's in their workspace that they feel that they can take back and try and implement some of the learnings that we've got from the program. We call them the capstone project. So, people at the beginning of the program we will be discussing what those projects are. So there'll be a thread through the 4 months. Remember, these are blocks over a 4-month period, 3 days per month and 3.5 days at the end, where there'll be this thread where people will be developing those projects, and in the last block presenting their capstone projects and solutions. So in that way, we practical application of what is going on in the course to take back to their respective either places of work or wherever they're operating.
So from that perspective,
sorry, Saskia.
Yes, I was going to say, from that perspective, Stilly, it sounds like it's very much about the practical application in your context.
Yeah, it is. There is a practical element to it, and it's important that we do make this actionable, right? The whole thing about it is to introduce these sometimes new concepts, sometimes new areas that people haven't had the opportunity to study, but then to take that information and turn that into action. And that's the real superpower here that I think that makes the real difference, is turning that knowledge into action. And we want to give people that opportunity to do that, and to nudge them towards solving these problems that they see and experience, but within the context of having a cohort, having people that they can access for guidance, and to hopefully solve some of these issues which they experience in their work.
We've got a question in from George Hoffman. Thank you so much, George. Asking if you could share one insight or lesson with today's media leaders, something maybe overlooked or misunderstood. What would it be? You haven't said who you'd like to direct it at. I'm going to direct it at Stilly. Could you give that a crack?
Yeah, and it's directly tied into this course. In my, I consume myself with thinking about sustainability of media and media organizations, and what are the key drivers that we have influence over that can move us forward in that respect. And the one thing that is overlooked are the things like leadership, professional development, innovation, culture, cost management, and operations. All these things which kind of are foundational to organizations and their ability to sustain themselves. But they're the one area, if we lump those all together, it's the one area that is overlooked and underinvested in in organizations, in media organizations, and I'd say maybe even in a lot of other organizations. So if we can do that through this course to show how much of an influence and an impact that investing in those things can have, and we'll be able to share a lot of our experience at Daily Maverick as well, because we've done that through me going through a program very similar to this, turning my capstone project into a strategic transformation of the organization, and then implementing that. We were able to see incredible growth and results by investing in these areas, which are often overlooked. And I think that's the one thing that we want to get across, that those areas that I mentioned have the opportunity to create exponential returns in the march against the problem of sustainability.
I think what's and because I'm inside of the organization, I think it's such a lovely the practicality of the theory and the practice. I can see this all coming to life in this course very beautifully, because it is kind of a working practitioner created course. Michael, just in terms of the practicalities of that 4-month block, can you talk a little bit to what that actually looks like? And I just want to remind everybody again that please apply. We are at the moment secured a little bit of sponsorship, in partial sponsorship from Google News Initiative, but apply, because we're going to be on the hunt for more. So if you're here and you can sponsor some students on this program, please do also reach out to us. But Michael, if you can just talk a little bit about that 4-month commitment and what that actually looks like, how that shapes. You're on mute.
Sorry, everybody.
There we go.
Before I do that, I saw there was a question from Adrian Hinchcliffe on Google's role as a supporter, and they said that given the role that Google and other big tech players have had with the news link, what is their level of input or influence in the syllabus? Google have had no influence in the syllabus. Google News Initiative, who are very aware of our advocacy on the think tank side, where we've been very critical, and it's well known, we make no secret of it, on the think tank side, where we deal with policy and regulation, and that is happening and that carries on, and it's certainly something that we don't have to declare because it's open. So just on that won't affect any of our advocacy and our policy and our regulatory work. I wanted to make that clear. Secondly, Google obviously been very supportive of this program, because like many big players in this ecosystem, I think it's right that they support it, and it's welcome, and we're grateful for it, because ultimately we can't wait, as I said at the outset, for that regulatory intervention. It's going to be very long. To get back to your question, why over the 4 months, etc., we structured it because first we realized that not everyone can keep coming back to GIBS in person over a period of 4 months. So the first block will be in person at GIBS, and that's why we say accommodation included when we talk about the tuition fees, because GIBS has a lodge on campus where we will be able to accommodate students who from out of town or out the country. And so then the first block is in person, then the 2 middle blocks, which will be August and September, will be online, and we'll continue the program as is online. And then the 4th and final block is in person again, where, as I said, people will be able to present their capstone projects, amongst other things. We'll bring the threads of the course together, and then there will be a graduation event as well on campus. And so that's just the thinking, Saskia. We didn't think it was a reasonable expectation to expect, particularly since we are targeting people outside South Africa, outside Johannesburg, for them to come back, 4 times in person. That's the rationale behind the structure.
Thank you. We have a question here from Derek Carlson. Derek asks, I looked at the course content. Where will digital rights be covered, especially the cross-territorial legal environment?
Yeah, there are 2 modules on policy and regulation where we expect to cover a lot of a lot of these issues that both Michael and I have a lot of experience working on in different projects. And so those issues which touch on the regulatory environment and things like digital rights and policy frameworks are also going to be covered. So it does look at a lot of things beyond just the scope of leadership internally, but also how we interact with the external environment and the regulatory environment around us.
And then I've got a question from Michael as well. The definition of media feels like a fast-moving target. Is the course suitable only for media leaders working for established outlets? Michael, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, no, it's actually the opposite. It's really trying to target as wide a range of different types of media, and I think it's a good point. I mean, media is an evolving concept. Journalism, we have to keep on redefining it given the nature of what's happening to the business model that's underpinning it. But we would want to have a broad range of participants from different types of media outlets and also communication professionals. You know, we see there's a lot of value that could be gained from understanding this, even if you're not sitting inside a media organization specifically, but you have to deal with media organizations, you have to deal with regulatory, you have to deal with understanding, and then you could also get some leadership and strategic assistance through the course as well. So absolutely, yes, we want a wide range of different participants from different types of outlets.
I see Cleopatra's also said, I'm interested in the course, but do you think the course will be of value to a government communicator? I think the answer there then is yes, absolutely. Yes. Suren has got a question. Thank you for this, Suren. IP is always a question. What about the IP with regards to the project or research projects presented at the end? Earlier on, you said come identifying a capstone project. I suppose that happens within the context of the business or the organization that it's happening in. But still, maybe if you can take that question just around IP.
Yeah, absolutely. It's up to the individual to decide what they're able to share with the rest of the class. We will only they will know the level of sensitivity that they need to respect. But the idea is to share problems, and often what happens with these problems is the problems are so common around most of our organizations that there usually aren't in our experience, but where there are, we absolutely respect those and have those potentially as a confidential presentation if needed, or part of that if needed. But the idea is that we get to see that a lot of the problems are universal, but sometimes the approaches can be bespoke, and that's really what we want to see from participants.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just jump in, Saskia, just on Cleopatra and government communications. I mean, we find that there's a lot of government communicators who actually former journalists and former media people, and we do think there's a lot of benefit that could be gleaned from people who are working in the government operations to actually understand what the challenges of media are, how to better communicate to media, noting these problems, and also pick up, as I said earlier, the skills of leadership and strategy, which can be useful in any environment, even if it is not straightforward in a media environment that you need to sustain. We do think it's broadly applicable. Obviously, the main focus is on media outlets, big, small, medium, but we certainly feel it's relevant for communication professionals, whether in the private sector or in government. Sorry to interrupt there, Saskia.
And just to add to that, Michael, one of our hopes is that the richness of the cohort is something that we're hoping to will be a big draw card for this, right? And the diversity of people from, we would love to have people from government communications, from corporate communications as well, so that this network is then built up and has a rich mix of individuals with different experiences and expertise that they're able to bring to this cohort and to make it more valuable for everyone as they not only for now, but as they grow into their future career paths as well.
While we're on this topic, I see Gabby asked a question about, because earlier on we spoke about, this is about the sustainability of public interest journalism. It's really what we're trying to interrogate. Gabby's saying, is this worthwhile for a media agency person? So a media strategist or a planner, not necessarily a journalist. Stilly, I think perhaps you should take this one.
Yeah, again, we would love to have someone like that on the course. There might be some of the modules will be journalism specific, but a lot of the other modules will be relevant to any individual with aspirations of leading teams and leading organizations. That will be useful. And because that interplay and those exchanges between media agencies and publishers, for example, it's so important. An understanding of both sides would be amazing to have someone like that in this course.
So again, I'm getting the sense that a varied cohort is going to add to the richness of the learnings for everybody involved, in terms of the different spaces that you come from, and then the learnings that you bring in with that. So you're looking for a rich and diverse a group of people. Mandla, and I suppose, Michael, I want to direct this one at you. Mandla's saying very interesting intervention. Is the course accredited, and at what level? Earlier on, we spoke about being in the executive education space in GIBS's, I'd say, basket of offerings.
So look, to be clear, it's not, the business schools do two things. They do academic programs, mainly, two things, and executive programs. So it's not accredited like an academic program would be within the sort of the education regulatory framework. It is an executive program. You'll get a certificate of completion from the #1 business school in Africa, and hopefully that is something that is to be valued. I've also seen some questions, Saskia, about the cost and funding opportunities and etc. And we did try. We know that we completely understand that the cost might be out of reach for many. I mean, we know the environment is difficult. We know that many media professionals may not be able to afford it, or their companies may not be able to sponsor them. And that's why we've been working very hard to find additional funders to help cover limited scholarships. So we do have some funding for some limited partial scholarships at the moment. And what we're encouraging people to do is, there's no separate application for scholarships. You have to apply through the normal application process. And I think someone will put it on the chat if it hasn't been put there already, is go through the front door, put your details in, and write your motivation. And the motivation letter is a very critical document, because it's not only going to be about motivating why you need financial assistance if you do, but it's also why you would most benefit from the course. I mean, we're obviously not going to be able to take everyone who applies from a resource and a capacity point of view, but we do want to be convinced by the motivation letters as to why that person would benefit, why they see themselves as benefiting and gaining from the course, and what they would hope to do with some of the skills that they gain. So what we're encouraging people to do, just to circle back to the scholarship issue, you need to actually apply directly through GIBS. It'll ask for all your details. Don't stress about that. Just apply, do your motivation letter, and then obviously we have a scholarship committee inside GIBS who will make those final decisions. But the only way to access that, Saskia, is to go through the GIBS application process, which is the same for all executive programs at GIBS.
So thank you. That answers Emma's question about funding options. Suren asked about whether there are other payment options as well. What is the normal payment structure for if you are flush, if your company can pay for this? What are those payment structure options?
Well, I think that, look, at GIBS, a lot of corporates do sponsor the executives or part of leadership development programs. That's in fact, most executive programs are structured like this, with very few, if any, scholarship opportunities. And we realize, particularly because we're targeting a distressed industry, it would be foolhardy to not try and offer some scholarship assistance where we can. But to answer the question more directly, if and we have been approached by some companies who are thinking of sending some of their executives or leaders or management on the course, they would normally just be sponsored by their company, and they'd fill in the necessary form on the application process, which caters for that.
Thank you for that. Some lovely comments coming through. Thank you, Taryn. Congratulations, colleagues. A promising initiative. Christopher also saying, Chris here from, is it Media8 Media? This program is really needed. Congratulations, colleagues. Skosana says, riveting. In what way could media leadership address and leverage on the gradual transition away from print media to online reporting? Wouldn't a hybrid of both compensate for easy media access? And I think this is such a great question for you, Stili, because I think in the Daily Maverick context, a lot of people aren't actually aware of the Daily Maverick ecosystem. And this is something the Daily Maverick has leaned into like really well, because yes, there's online, there's the newsletters, but actually we have a weekly print paper as well. There's also the publishing division that publishes books that of investigations that our authors, our journalists work on. So perhaps you can answer this, Skosana's question in that context, Stili, please.
Yeah, when we look around, there's still a lot of organizations, traditional or legacy operators, who are struggling with that digital transformation of their businesses, from being sort of print or broadcast reliant in their business models. So we do cover that in the course. We also look at it a little bit more broadly than just digital transformation. We're looking at the strategic transformation of organizations as well, which will encompass the digital transformation, but also how do we look at the organizational design of the modern media organization? What does that look like? What are the features and functions and divisions that one should have, and how much should each one get in terms of resource, for example? So we'll have case studies of African and international examples of successful strategic transformations of those organizations, and recognizing that this is a key part of moving us towards sustainability, which is, what does the digitally transformed business or revenue mix look like? What should we be aiming for? What does good look like? What is the roadmap? And what are the targets that we should be setting ourselves in terms of re-engineering our businesses and our revenue mix for the digital age as well? So a very important part of the course curriculum.
And I suppose, Stili, having been a media professional myself for many decades, and being in media, the industry has got such a action for bias, that this opportunity to be able to pull back and look at from a space of, you talk about the strategic transformation and what is needed. That's not often, as a media professional, what you have the opportunity to do. So I suppose in doing that, this cohort is given this opportunity to then look at the bigger landscape, look at the levers, because there isn't actually a roadmap, really. I think everybody's struggling with it. So it's giving you that place to actually help to ideate what that looks like for your context.
Yeah, most businesses struggle with the day-to-day operations, the demands of the day-to-day operations, which suck you in, and probably none more than the news industry. For example, the fast-paced media industry, even around news, for example. And so this really is an opportunity for people to get stuck in, to give themselves that space to look at these big issues, right? If we are not thinking long-term, when the short-term demands and crises and the fires that we try to put out don't give us that space, here's a structured program that's going to help us look at the big picture opportunities and the risks, and where we need to be working towards, so that we can take these ideas, go back, dive deeper in them, and turn them into action in our own organizations. And so that's what we're hoping we'll achieve with this.
I just want to continue to encourage people to ask questions in the chat. And of course, the application links are there, as well as the program brochures there. So please do have a look at it. Michael, Laura wants to know, how big do we expect that first cohort to be? How many people would be ideal?
Okay. Saskia, we haven't set a fixed number yet. I mean, I think the final cohort size will depend on the volume and the quality of the applications, but also, of course, the available resources. But I can assure that no matter the size, we're confident that participants will benefit from a powerful peer group and access to a teaching faculty that we believe will give a unique offering. So I can't say what the size will be, but it's certainly not going to be more than 30. But it's certainly, between 20 and 30 would be a max. But we haven't made a fixed number yet. So I think that's the answer to that question. Thanks.
Thank you. Stili, Isaac wants to know, will the course explore the possible overlaps between media and social media content regulation?
Yeah, there are a couple of classes that are scheduled to look at policy frameworks and the regulatory environment. As I mentioned, Michael and I have both done a lot of work on that. We're also going to lean on other experts who have worked on different policy interventions here, so that we can also dive deep on those, debate those, and possibly inspire others from other countries to be able to go back and get involved in some of those measures. So yes, definitely covered in the course.
And I could add to that, Saskia, one of the advantages of being in the think tank as well is we've developed very strong South-to-South relationships. I know this is a very African-focused course, but we've got strong partnership with people in Brazil and Indonesia. And we are not unique in the sense that we are trying to struggle on how to deal with this best from a regulatory point of view. So, yeah, I mean, as Stili adequately answered Isaac's question, we will also try and bring in people who are looking at different strategies. We're obviously very well versed with what's happening in South Africa with the Competition Commission. Stili is involved in other regulatory interventions, as he mentioned, but it's not going to just close us off from what's happening around the world. We're going to try and bring in the best practice and have a bit of a discussion on each session about what would work in each particular country that the individual members of the cohort come from.
Michael, maybe you should just tell us just a little bit about that GIBS Media Leadership Think Tank and what that actually brings into this kind of, being the home of where it's actually going to live, what that means in terms of what value it adds to an executive leadership course like this.
Thanks, Saskia. Well, look, we founded the think tank a few years ago, but really our sort of big project that came to fruition is we organized a global conference in 2023, calling it Big Tech and Journalism, Building a Sustainable Future in the Global South. And we had people from about 28 different countries here on the GIBS campus. And we also, most significantly, adopted principles for fair compensation between big tech and journalism. And that sort of helped the think tank develop international relations across the world and global connections. And we're currently involved, as I mentioned, with colleagues in Brazil and Indonesia in a tricontinental conference series. We've just been one in Sao Paulo in Brazil. There'll be one in Jakarta in July, and then in Joburg in September. So we're able to not only shape what we feel is the sort of South African and the African policy discussions, but we very much involved as a think tank with what's happening around the world, with a very specific emphasis on the South to South, on the global South, on the global majority.
Michael, I see Stuart's also got a question here on whether there will be a module on journalism ethics, adherence to the SA Press Code, what is and what isn't the right to free speech. So for this executive education course, will we be delving into that at all, into the content?
Well, You can go. You can take that, Steady.
Yeah, thanks. We're not going to go that deep on this. We're not planning to. That's the kind of thing that you do at journalism schools, where they dive deep on that. What we're looking for here is to cover the leadership side of running organizations, right, and running these teams. The press code is there. It's for newsrooms who go deep on how they structure their work and how they adhere to that. We're looking at some of the bigger picture, long-term strategic stuff, which obviously is underpinned by adhering to ethics, business ethics, as well as press ethics. But this is not a journalism course. This is not a journalism honors program. There are those that exist. We're looking at the leadership side of the organization, the long-term strategic development of our organizations in response to the sustainability crisis.
Stilly, Harvey's got a question here just around why journalists don't show contact details to enable public to engage with them.
Yeah, I think that's different for different organizations. They have their different policies. Some of them do show their email addresses or make them a lot easier and available. Unfortunately, we are also in an industry where a lot of abuse happens. And so you have to walk that balance between trying to protect the mental health of our journalists, with also creating avenues for people to send in tip-offs, for example, anonymously, and to protect their privacy around that. But also then shielding, journalists, and especially female journalists, who bear the brunt of the online abuse that happens, unfortunately, way too much. So there are general lines that we have open at the Daily Maverick where we will direct those to. Unfortunately, sometimes we do have to filter out a lot of stuff that you really just don't want to share with journalists who are already under a lot of pressure, who have to deal with a lot of online abuse. And so there are those mechanisms, but usually, well, in our case, through general inquiry avenues.
Yeah, I want to add it's mental and physical safety. And I think this is something within Daily Maverick I can speak to that we're always engaging with. So for instance, because we want to get that feedback, last year with the elections, there was even an entire newsletter that was created out of that. It's called Your Questions Answered, based off of this idea of, that feedback is so important, that it's a conversation, that it's not a one-way communication in terms of public service journalism. So there are mechanisms in place. Denise wants to know, does this apply to journalists wanting to start their own publications? Stilly, perhaps you can take that question.
Look, certainly the curriculum will be really useful for people who are thinking about starting their own organizations. It might be a little early. It's not, I don't think, exactly geared for startups, but will be useful as soon as that organization starts growing and you start thinking about, what should we invest our limited resources in? How do we structure our teams? What do we need to cover within our organizations? What, the different products, the strategies that we need to employ, the business models. And so it would certainly be useful, but it might be a little bit geared for maybe slightly bigger organizations, depending on where what your plans are. I mean, if you're launching a media organization with a team of 5, it'll be a lot more useful than if you're starting out a one-man operation as well, or one-person operation. I don't know, Michael, if you have different thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Stevie. I mean, when I said that, the program would be interesting for founders of public, I was thinking of the established or at least on the ground news organizations that were already in place, and that they have a chance to grow. So yes, I would align with what Stevie's saying. But as I said, if you've got a vision that is particularly compelling and you've got an investment case and you've got people behind you, I would encourage you to apply. I wouldn't totally rule it out that if you haven't kicked off, but I think Stevie's point is well made.
Yeah, I would encourage you to apply anyways, just because you're going to be plugged into a think tank, you're going to be plugged into a network of individuals who you can test your idea off of, and that might even just be such an invaluable space, just in terms of who you'll have access to in the room with the peers, and of course the teaching faculty. Can we talk about that just very quickly as well, Michael? Who's going to be teaching on the program?
Look, Saskia, what we're doing at the moment, I mean, we do have some names, a lot of names confirmed, but we're currently finalizing the allocation of teaching slots with both the GIBS faculty and invited experts, both African and global. So I don't want to preempt any kind of formal announcements now. I can say with confidence, really, that there will be a strong mix of GIBS faculty, African experts, and globally recognized people who are in the space, who have taught in programs like this before, have experience in big newsrooms and small. So that's what I can say at this stage. So I don't want to really preempt those announcements that will be made in due course in the next few months.
Fantastic. A question from Adrian Stilly, maybe a hard question to answer, but maybe not. How much time is likely to be expected outside of structured learning in terms of hours that you need to give to this, in terms of that commitment?
Yeah, it is difficult, but do expect that this will be an intense 4 months. I think prepare yourself. There are readings ahead of each course that will need to be done. People will need to come prepared for those sessions, and then also work on their projects as well. So it will be intense. It will be like having another part-time job as well. But there was also the thinking behind keeping it to a condensed 4-month period as opposed to extending this over the period of a year. Is jump in, get stuck in, feel some of the pressure, get involved, and it'll be an incredible experience at the end of it. So do be prepared to put in some hours. I thought of this, how long that takes for everyone is going to be slightly different, but it will be not overbearing, but there will be a serious time commitment needed.
And assessments, what kind of assessments are we looking at? Is it a mixture of project-based? Are we writing exams?
No exams, okay, but as I said, you will the successful applicants will have a chance to present their capstone projects at the end for that peer group review and engagement and involvement, and I think that's really, really valuable. I also think that just to sort of add to what Stevie said, I mean, we've got 12.5 days of intense teaching, lecturing, instructional across those 4 months. So that 12.5 days is sort of the bare minimum of time over the 4.5 months. But obviously in between that, there's going to be readings required. There's going to be work on your capstone required. And the more prepared you come to the program, like anything else, the more you're going to get out of it.
Thank you. David Scrooby says business who support the ANC or the DA should pay 25% to the media leadership program. It will realize a far better increment. I tend to agree with you. But still, on that note, I mean, does this exist, this fund for, because this is a societal imperative more than anything else, that public service journalism survives. And I know as industry professionals, we all, come hell or high water, going to try to get it over the line to make sure that it's sustainable. But this is actually for the benefit of society, really. Does this thing exist from a regulatory perspective? I mean, it should be important.
Yeah, so I mean, no sort of rebate or regulation exists where that funding can be accessible. But it is, funny enough, one of the recommendations that we are making as part of a policy framework to support public interest journalism is that organizations and media organizations who invest in professional development of their people should get a rebate on that spend to encourage the industry to invest in this area, which has been overlooked or underinvested in because of the crisis. So we do recognize that it is one of the recommendations in a policy framework that it is being suggested, but again, also recognizing the value and the importance of continuing to develop the leaders who are tasked with navigating media organizations through the sustainability crisis.
If I could just add to that, sorry, Saskia, is that also
Yes.
on the other side of the regulatory coin, where I've been working, is that in the Competition Commission's provisional report, and I stress it is provisional, they have put out the concept of a media industry fund that would be funded by the platforms and other parties that would help sustain as a structural intervention. So it's because it's recognizing that the market, there's adverse anti-competitive conditions. But again, that's a provisional finding, and there's quite a long way to go. So to add to Stevie, we are pushing in our different ways to get these types of this type of support for these types of initiatives. But at this stage, it's not in place in terms of any law.
We are 5 minutes away from wrapping up. I think I want to give you both 2 minutes for closing remarks. Perhaps, Dilly, we should start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced firsthand the potential for a program like this and what it can do for not only the individual who participates in it, but for the organization, where they take that experience and those learnings and those ideas back into their organizations, and also at the same time maintain an incredible network of new friends and colleagues around the world. And so I can only share my experience and why I've dedicated so much time to helping to get this off the ground. It really has been transformative, not only for my career, but also for Daily Maverick as a whole. And we serve as a case study of what is possible with something like this. And so we hope that this will be the first of a long run for this course at GIBS. And just to thank Michael and GIBS for running with this, for the sponsors who've already come on board, the interested parties in submitting. And so those of you who are on this course, who are in the market to apply, please apply. Those of you who have the ability to sponsor, please sponsor, reach out to Michael or myself. We will gladly walk you through that process of either people in your organization who you'd like to sponsor or others that you might want to make available with sponsorships too. And please do share the information about this course widely so that others who might be interested in either participating or sponsoring, so that they can get that information necessary and get this going, and to make this first cohort an incredible one that sets the tone and the standard for the future.
Thank you, Stilly. Michael?
Yeah, well, thanks, Didi, and thanks for everyone who attended today. One thing I can say that I'm very confident about is we've got an incredible team at GIBS that is very used to delivering complex, different sizes of executive programs. We can't wait to get this cohort onto our campus, because there's something that people who work at GIBS, it's called the GIBS magic. It's a bit of intangible, but there's something about the way the school is structured and how open it is, and the ability for people to come and stay with us on campus. We feel it will hugely benefit those who feel a bit isolated from these issues. And so I need to also just thank the team at GIBS for their support so far, and they're really standing by to assist with applications and any queries that people may have. And of course, to thank the sponsors and everyone has helped get us here today. Thanks so much, Saskia.
Thank you, everybody. And I want to thank everybody for coming onto this call today, and really just to encourage you to apply, to look at the brochure, to send in your questions. I also am going to punt a little bit of Daily Maverick because we will never be behind a paywall. Public service interest journalism must be available and accessible to all, and we will continue to do that. So if you can afford to be a Maverick insider, I hope that you will head on over to our page and also become a member of our beautiful community. Thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, you can always reach out to us if you have any questions or if anything is completely unclear. We will continue, of course, to do these webinars as well. So if you are interested in more webinars like this, please also head over to our webinar and events page and register. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much, Stilly.
Thanks a lot.
And I want to say thank you to the entire Daily Maverick team.